Part One-on-One with Mr. Burgher.
Welcome to another episode of Art One-on-One. I'm Nichole Jordan, your host, pod boss, alongside Mr. Burgher, your professional artist and master educator.
Thank you for the warm introduction today. So, it's been a while.
Yeah, we haven't recorded for a while.
Well, not here. I mean, we haven't recorded here. And, we do a couple of them in advance and we kind of get a run and roll at it. But a couple weeks ago, now, a very famous actor passed away that you don't like.
Yes.
Paul Reubens, better known as Pee Wee Herman.
I don't know that I said I don't like him. I just said he annoyed me.
Yeah. Which most things that you find annoying you don't like, with maybe the exception of me.
And I don't like you at times either, so.
So there you have it.
That's probably accurate.
But Pee Wee Herman has left its mark on so many things, including Art 101 with Mr. Burgher. And I posted a video on it a couple weeks back where basically it was him explaining an out. So if you're in the middle of a story and you don't know what to, you're like, I don't know how to end this story in a really great way, you say, I love that story, and you're out.
You had a little bit of his laugh in there. You
Yeah,
just try to do that.
and I used to, if you go back and you watch the end of Art 101 with Mr. Burgher, there is a point in the past year or two maybe, where I started, my ending started going with, I love that story. And then there were oftentimes, as you've pointed out so
graciously,
that sometimes I talk about not so pleasant things. And so then it's like, the artist was dead and horrible and everything horrible in the world happened to this artist. And then there's me. I love that story. And so then it was, my gosh, if I end this the wrong way, it's going to be me laughing on this kind of somber ending. And so then I kind of modified it to be, I love telling you that. I hope you love hearing that story as much as I love yapping about it, or whatever I say.
Yes.
At the end. Mm-hmm. And that is a homage, that is a reference to, that is a tribute to, that is a dog call, that is so much stuff in reference to Mr. Pee Wee Herman, Mr. Paul Reubens in his brain. And the other thing is, Pee Wee Herman was performance art. We've talked about performance art in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that he was a performance artist, and he took it to another level. People didn't separate him from the character. He lived the character. And he was doing so on such a high level that he was making movies, he was making TV shows, he was making appearances on David Letterman or The Tonight Show or Conan O'Brien or wherever. This blessed dog. God bless the dogs. And anyway, I think that the individuals that whose talk shows he would go on, he would just talk about his toys and talk about his stuff, and he was just this weird character.
But he was always Pee Wee Herman out in public, right? He was never...
For a long time he was, I think. I mean, to hear him tell the story, he very rarely did, and there's all kinds of stuff on YouTube, and him talking about it. I'm going to post some stuff, also, and I have posted some stuff on YouTube about, him giving talks about the performance art, him going into meetings with executives, and them thinking, hey, Pee Wee, we'll pay you $25 to make a movie. Okay. Or whatever he does. And I'm sure he didn't agree to make a movie for $25.
Yes. So that happened. What? A couple weeks ago.
A couple weeks ago, I think. And for what it's worth, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Holy smokes! Now we're having a fireworks show. Pee-wee, whose idea was it to do this outside on the deck?
It's my idea. Yes.
So I don't know what I was even talking about. It doesn't matter.
You said, I don't even know. I don't know where you were going with what you were talking about.
I don't know where I was going either. It doesn't matter.
Just finish it off with Pee Wee Herman.
Pee Wee Herman.
So you...
He was an individual that I watched his movies, and I saw the TV show and all of the stuff that he did. I appreciated it. I wouldn't say that I was the biggest fan, but I also can't say I didn't watch Pee-wee's Playhouse, because I definitely did.
I mean, I may have a few times, but...
I definitely watched Pee-wee's Playhouse. I definitely, I know people that had, like, the doll and the cherry and the all that kind of stuff, so...
He took it to the extreme with his performance.
He definitely made it art worth watching to some audiences.
Yeah, not me. But it is sad that he... How old was he when he passed away?
70. Which is unbelievable, because he didn't look 70.
He did not at all.
He at the end there, he'd kind of been out of the spotlight for several years. I think he said 6 years he hadn't been in the spotlight.
Well, because he had cancer for 6 years,
right.
He said.
Which, terrible. But, be that as it may, Pee Wee Herman and his legacy, I can't say that you can't talk about the 80s without thinking about Pee-wee's Playhouse, Pee Wee Herman, and the stuff that he was, the Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And he was talking about how his movie, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, is oftentimes shown in people that go to school to make movies, movie class, that's like, you have to watch Pee-wee's Big Adventure because it is the perfect arc. And he explained why. He's like, it was a 90-page script, and we used there was like some book that said like how to make a movie. So he just followed it. Page 1 was what they did on page 1, and page 90 is what they said to do on page 90 for the conclusion. And he followed it exactly. On page, 30, he lost his bike. There had to be a conflict. You have to lose something. Oh, I'll lose something. I'll lose my bike. And on page, so like everything.
So you and him could have been besties because he was a definite rule follower.
Well, he followed the structure, and that got the movie made.
Gotcha. Awesome.
What do I know? I color for a living, but I can copy and paste. That was before copy and paste, though. You know what I'm saying? Anyway.
So there's your tribute to Pee-wee.
R.I.P. Paul Rubens.
Paul Rubens. I would have never known his name other than Pee Wee Herman.
Pee Wee Herman. And I honestly, the first time, I thought Pee Wee was I thought it was like a real guy. I was one of those guys that thought this guy might be a real guy.
Well, you said he used Pee-wee as the real guy, because you gave me an instance of which I did think was interesting, he wanted to be on the dating game.
Yeah, he was on
that story. I do think that's
he was on. He thought, well, I want to do something with the character, so he auditioned for the dating game, and he dressed up as Pee-wee, and he showed up to the producers or whatever, and then they're interviewing him and asking him questions, and he answered the questions like, "What do you like to do in your spare time?" "I like to clean my room." That's what he said. And
exactly, and he sounded just like that.
And and so it was all right, and he knew right away in his own brain, I'm definitely going to get on this show. And not only did he get on the show once, he got on the dating game 3 times, but never went on a date. Anyway, so go into the YouTube archives or whatever
Google
and try to find the
episode
of Dating Game with Pee-wee. Anyway, but
Interesting.
What a brilliant guy! Like, to use a character in like there are certain
brilliant
people,
or a little bit crazy, which is a lot of artists as well.
But that's the comic. That's the thing. That's the, like, there are certain artists of that ilk, like Emo Phillips. Emo Phillips, like, was the character. Bobcat Goldthwait, like the Police Academy movies, like Sam Kinison became the character. There are so many of those 80s comedians, 70s, 80s comedians that kind of became their own caricature. For good or, for better, for worse. Sam Kinison, maybe for the worse, Pee Wee Herman maybe for the better, but the first time I ever saw Pee Wee Herman, like, in a movie, was Cheech and Chong. There's a Cheech and Chong movie with where he's like the bellboy or something, but he plays like a Pee Wee Herman character in the Cheech and Chong. I think it's Cheech and Chong's next movie, if I'm not mistaken. But another set of caricature type 70s, 80s comedians. But
interesting.
So, there's that. So, Pod Boss.
What's next?
What's next?
Well, we kind of got sidetracked, because normally we start with the cards, pulling the cards to steer our conversation, but
so
Pee-wee
took some time. So do we want to jump into the cards?
I think so.
Okay. Our cards are a deck that we use from Lawrence King Publishing. Pretty nice little set. You can find them online. I know they are personally out of stock, but they are quickly producing more and more cards, and you can buy them on Amazon or on wherever you buy things on the internets.
Okay.
And today's card?
Today's card is
Damien Hirst.
Damien Hirst.
And I only know a little bit about Damien Hirst, to be honest with you. I know the jewel-encrusted skulls I've seen, and the shark in the formaldehyde I've seen, and maybe a couple of other pieces that I've seen of his.
So he's a more contemporary artist.
He's very contemporary.
Still living.
He's still alive. There are some people that think that he's a bit of a because he's like taking a shark and putting it in formaldehyde and calling it art. There are some people that call him kind of a con, like he's not authentic as an artist.
Really? Because he's using...
because he's using...
That doesn't make sense, because art... You've used all kinds of things in all kinds of art. I'm just saying that there are some people that would argue that Damien Hirst is not an authentic artist, but more of a, taking advantage of the system type guy. Interesting.
I don't know if that's true or not. That's not my story, per se. That's just what I'm hearing around the campfire.
Well, it's interesting because what are the three sections? Or the three
life, work, and inspiration. Which one would you like to discuss today, Pod Boss?
To be honest, they're all awful. It just kind of shows how interesting this guy is.
Just pick one.
Art and science are for confronting mortality.
Art and science are for confronting mortality. I think that...
I can see science, but I have no idea why art would be that. Because of him, I suppose.
I think that there are some artists that talk about, like, a Vanitas type thing where they talk about death. There are certain instances where artists will make artwork about death. The one that jumps into my head is a very famous Caravaggio painting of David with the severed head of Goliath. And you see this David holding a sword, and he's holding Goliath's head.
It just made me think of Hank doing this.
Oh yeah.
The other night.
A couple nights ago, Hank, we were talking about wrestling moves, and and we were talking about like folk style wrestling, and so there's a particular move called the guillotine, and he said, "Well, why is it called the guillotine? What is the guillotine?" I said, "Well, a guillotine was without trying to get into it, kind of got into it, and I said, well, a guillotine was a machine that they used in France to chop off people's heads. He's like, oh, like, for pretend? And I'm, no, like, to really cut people's heads off. And, well, why would they do that? Anyway, so then the night progressed, and then we were laying down, getting ready for bed, and Hank said, and I will cut your head off with the knife. And it was so funny. And I just died laughing, because he's like the way he did it, and his face, and the whole thing, and the way he kind of like made one eye kind of squinty and one eye googly. It kind of looked like, there was a cartoon that had like a cat, like with one eye winked and one eye really big, like Calvin and Hobbes type.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. There was like, there's a cartoon, like a comic strip type cartoon with one squinty eye, one really big eye on like a cat, like a tiger or something. Anyway, kind of looked like that. And he stuck his tongue out, and it just was funny. And because I thought it was funny,
then he did it over and over and over
on repeat.
They were giggling. But,
and so,
yes.
Anyway,
I see what you're saying. I mean, art definitely can. It's just like anything else. You can use art to exemplify anything, and death would be, or like the fears around death, or what did you say the famous piece was that you were thinking about though?
Oh,
when I interrupted you.
David holding the head of Goliath, which is a interesting Caravaggio double self-portrait. He paints himself in his youth as David, and paints himself as he was as Goliath, like the good youthful self trying to kill the bad old self, and he was always trying to overcome, and so it's kind of this very much focused on death and self-realization, and kind of a very interesting introspective work by Caravaggio. And Caravaggio was a bit of a ornery character. He killed people, and not a nice guy, not an overly pleasant guy, but some artwork that you can think about. And I do think that art and science both make you think about, or can make you think about, your mortality.
Well, and especially what the type of art that he's doing with the animals and the formaldehyde and
right.
Is he preserving certain things?
Well, and it's just like, for me, like, there are so many museums. Like, we were at the Kansas City Art Institute, the Nelson Adkins Art Museum, not long ago. There's a video about it. Check it out. And in going through that museum, I made mention of the mummy that was there. And to me, it's like, I understand why art museums like the Louvre or the Nelson Adkins or whatever museum takes a mummy and they put it on display, because it's interesting. The way they wrap the bandages, the artistry of it, the craftsmanship of it is truly amazing. The
science of how they figured it out.
The science of it is
more so interesting to me, but
I mean, like, to think that thousands of years ago, this human being lived thousands of years ago, and their body is still, to some degree, intact inside these wrappings. But to the point, it's also, in my opinion, a little bit gruesome. Like, if somebody said, in 1,000 years from now, somebody's going to dig up your parents, and they're going to take their coffin, and they're going to lay them out on a table and let people look at them.
Well, that's not, isn't that what they wanted if they're trying to preserve them?
No. The mummification process by the Egyptians was for them to be entombed in this tomb with their things, so that they could go to their afterlife, to their heaven, their equivalent of heaven, with their belongings, with their things, and to be preserved for all of time. not to be drugged to an art museum and put into a plastic box so other people could, take selfies with them.
Preserving themselves. So, I don't know.
They are definitely preserved, but not in the context that they would probably have preferred to be preserved.
I get what you're saying.
And I get it. Like, you can't... If you leave it there, then people could vandalize it. People could do all kinds of things. And so, trying to preserve the space, trying to preserve the human remains is important.
To some people.
To some people. But I also think that it's also important to just kind of, like, have a little bit of respect for the dead folks. Like, in 1,000 years, I don't want my dad to be dug up and his coffin be laid out on. I don't want my mom's coffin to be dug up. I don't want,
I wouldn't care. I'm not there.
Well, you want to be cremated.
I don't. Yeah, because my body, my soul.
Blessed
I'm
to the
out.
wind. Blessed to the wind.
I'm not there anymore. So who cares what? You can do whatever to my body.
Whatever.
Well, okay, literal. All right, enough about death and mortality.
But I do think that's. I do think that there is a line, and I think that to me, like, I don't like. I understand why they're there in the art museum, the mummies, I'm speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that there's a point where you gotta, like, all right, maybe these things should be...
Art always walks that gray area, I feel like, though.
But I think that, this wasn't created as an art piece.
No.
This was...
ruins that people... get and put in, like, all of those things, those all cross. That's a gray area whether to leave those. I don't know.
Right.
It is what it is. I agree with what you're saying, though. I mean,
but I just think that you need to have a little bit more respect for the deceased, and they don't need to be drug out on a table and looked at. We don't need to have an unwrapping party like they did in the 1920s, because inside those wrappings are little amulets and things. And in the 1920s, really rich people used to buy mummies and have them imported. And they'd have, like, a big set of, like, big scissor shears. And they'd cut them. And then you'd unwrap a wrapping. And anything that fell out in the wrapping, you got to take home as your little take-home souvenir.
I'm surprised more people didn't get dug up then by, like, poor...
Well, they're...
So it's rich people doing this instead of poor people digging them up and pulling all of that stuff out of there?
I mean, rich people, that's what they did. And then, then they just take the dead body, they lay it out on a banquet table and unwrap it, and then what do? You got a dead body sitting there, so you just throw away the corpse. And to me, that's just beyond disrespectful. Beyond disrespectful.
Got it.
But yeah, the fourth Impressionist art show, you've got people like Monet kind of not being 100% into it, but then kind of reluctantly, all right, I'll do it because our good friend and monetary backer Gustave Caillebout decides, like he's buddies with Monet, and he's buddies, and he's making sure that he's good to go. And Monet was a little bit not very good with money, and so Monet...
You can't be everything.
You can't be everything. And so Monet needed money for the rent, and Gustave Caillebout paid the rent. And so he's like, I'll pay the rent, but I'd really like you to be in the Impressionist show. So he kind of felt like, well, I kind of gotta. So he did. You've got other individuals not participating, like, Who
are the big dropouts? Anybody?
The biggest dropout that particular year is kind of a questionable dropout. And I say that because Bertha Morisot, who was like an Impressionist heavy hitter, she was an Impressionist stud. Mm-hmm. But she had a baby that year. So she wasn't there because she was taking care of her daughter.
Okay.
Couldn't.
So it's not really a dropout.
But she wasn't in the show. At least she wasn't on in the catalog. But there are some people that have said, there are conflicting reports that say that she actually did have artwork in that show. But there's nothing concrete to support that. So, was she in the show? Was she not in the show?
Yeah, I was going to jump ahead and talk about something else, but you won't.
So I would say that she would be the biggest no-show. But this was also the first show with the inclusion of Mary Cassatt, the American Impressionist, who would revolutionize things.
So first exhibition was when?
1874.
Fourth was
76, 77, 79.
79. 74 to 79?
No. What did I say? 77, 79. Did I say? Well, yeah. 74 was the first one.
Okay.
And then number 5, which we'll talk about, is 80.
Okay.
1880.
So we're 4 years into it now.
Right.
For the fourth exhibition. Once a year.
Well, no.
No?
Well, the first one is in 74.
Mm-hmm.
The last one is 70. The fourth one is in 79.
So 5 years into it. Tomato. 4 or 5 years into it.
You're right. Tomato. 4, 5. No, that's not tomato. Either it's 4 or it's 5.
So did anything big happen in this one?
That'd
I mean,
like
so far it's just been like...
That'd be like a little kid saying, what's 3 plus 2?
0.
3. No. Tomato.
Okay.
No.
All right. So, I mean, nothing really drastic has changed since they've started this. They've just kind of been rolling along.
It's been pretty... It's slowly building with importance to the critics. The public has slowly built to enjoying it. They've gone from making negative money to making profitable money, some profitable money.
Was it just like nowadays where you do these things just to gain, like it's a marketing thing, really? Like, put your name out there and get your artwork out there, and you don't really, the goal isn't to make money, but it's to get your name out there and get.
Right.
Is that what the goal is, or no?
Their goal is to sell paintings, sell artwork.
Well, apparently that's not happening so much.
No, it was. I mean, it was definitely happening. It just wasn't happening across the board on the full scale. The other thing was like internal conflicts. You know, you have Calabut saying we want to go this direction. You have Degas saying we want to go this direction. You've got Monet who's got these opinions. You got Pizarro who's got these opinions.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
You got a lot of people cooking.
That's what happens.
So
that was the main video.
Right. And then there was the other video that you had made mention of with which is another like one of the SHORTY type videos with William Blake.
No.
The reincarnation of William Blake.
Oh, which his real name is what?
Who is the artist that felt that he was the reincarnation of William Blake?
That's what I'm asking you.
I'm asking you.
I don't remember.
You put it on your phone.
I know I did. I didn't want to be rude and pick up my phone.
Oh, well, you would be rude and pick up your phone 5 minutes ago.
It was Dante Rossetti.
Dante Rossetti was an artist who felt like he was the reincarnation of William Blake.
Further expand on that. I don't really know what you're...
He was... Okay, so 9 months after the death of William Blake, Rossetti was born.
So who put this in his head? Did he put this in his head, or was somebody else?
He researched it and said that he was the reincarnation of William Blake. Now, whether he was or he wasn't, I don't know. What's your opinion on this?
I know nothing about him.
I'm not talking about him specifically. I'm talking
Could he be reincarnated?
I'm talking about the reincarnation process. What is your opinion?
It totally intrigues me. Gosh, we may gain some followers or lose some followers here, but I'm obviously a very spiritual person, and I do believe in reincarnation. I believe that you live many lifetimes, and you learn different things throughout each lifetime. And we talked about this the other night, like aliens and UFOs, and I don't know how I feel about all that stuff, but I do believe that there's an afterlife. I do believe that you come back and live many lives, and I do believe that reincarnation is a thing. There's books out there about these little kids that come back, and there's a little boy that kept talking about planes and flying in this war and having this specific plane with this tag on the side and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm sure some of that stuff can be.
So, explain to me then, because I don't know that I was reincarnated. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. But if I was, don't you think I would have some recollection of my previous existence?
Some people, that's where they say some kids do. Like, some kids come into this
why
life.
Don't I? If some kids do and some...
Because you're not, you talk about the sixth sense, or more than...
the sixth sense? Like, I see dead people.
Yes, exactly. Some people are more tapped into those other senses than...
Is that why I'm better at drawing than your average bear?
I don't know.
Is that something that, like, I'm the reincarnation of... like, I've got to go back. Okay, who died in...
Who do you think you could be reincarnated as?
Who died in December of...
It wouldn't have to be 9. It wouldn't... You can come back anytime.
How do you not know that? How do you know, though?
Because different people have different recollections. If you read books on things like that.
Wouldn't that be reincarnation, though? So if you died in a certain month of a certain year, then...
You're going to be...
Your ticket's up. Go on.
Have you seen Soul? Have you seen the movie Soul?
I've seen the movie Soul. But that's... The movie... A cartoon movie Soul is not going to explain to me the reality of life and death.
Well, apparently nobody can. But it's still...
It's unknown.
Yes. It's just what you believe. And that's what I believe. But that's also because of things that have happened in this lifetime to me.
The things that have happened in this lifetime. And it's getting darker and darker.
It is.
And for those that are listening in a podcast type format, it doesn't matter. But for the people that are watching on a YouTube type format, it probably does.
Maybe. It's probably better, though, that it's dark. And you can just hear us instead of see us. Although we are wearing them. I mean, I've got my new shirt on, my Art 101.
Art 101.
You're
wearing
Art 101.
I've got my... And you can find these on, Redbubble.
Yes.
But that's neither here nor there. The point is, reincarnation.
Where were we? Oh, that was from William Blake.
William Blake.
Yeah. So who was William Blake, and why did he want to be William Blake?
Well, William Blake was a famous British... he was a artist, illustrator, poet. He did lots of things. People say that he was schizophrenic. People say that maybe he talked to angels, but people oftentimes attribute him talking to angels and seeing things and visions and things to being mentally ill in some way. But
Blake? William Blake was?
Yes.
So why did Rossetti want to be him reincarnated then?
Because he's the artist that died 9 months before he was born.
Was he popular?
Yeah.
Was he a good artist?
Yeah. You've seen his artwork, even if you don't know you've seen it. Have you ever seen the movie Bull Durham?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Susan Sarandon character talks about William Blake, and then Kevin Costner says, William Blake? William Blake! What do you mean, William Blake? I mean William Blake! It's a famous scene. It's a famous scene in Bull Durham, which is a baseball movie from North Carolina. So if you don't care about Bull Durham or North Carolina or baseball or whatever, then you don't know what I'm talking. Or Kevin Costner making baseball movies. Is this heaven? No. It's Iowa. You wouldn't understand.
Well, I'm just trying to understand why Rossetti wanted to be William Blake. And I get it. He was 9 months, but that isn't how reincarnation works. It doesn't have to be 9 months.
Well, according to Rossetti, it is. According to Rossetti, your logic is flawed, and his logic is spot on.
It's only my opinion.
So, and the other thing is, how many people are in the world right now? Some billions people.
Okay.
How in the world can there be more people now than there have ever been ever in the history of the planet Earth if everybody...
That doesn't make sense what you just said. That's backwards.
What do you mean?
If then everybody reincarnated, there's still going to be more people.
Okay, but so where did the first people get reincarnated to?
Some people don't want to be reincarnated.
They got reincarnated from a snail or something?
And then they're out.
They were a dog, they were a cat, they were a turnip, then they were a dude named Chuck.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to come back again on this earth.
I don't want anything to do with this earth. Let me go to another earth. I think that's the end. Maybe you should close this out.
All right.
What don't you think?
Yeah, my drink is gone, so.
All right, well, there you have it.
I think it's a good time to wrap it up, and thank everybody for watching, and let them know that they can find us on multiple platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all the things. Like and subscribe if you would. That helps us out immensely. And hopefully next time we won't be finishing in the dark like we are this time.
Wasn't my idea.
Well, chalk it up to another.
Pod boss, decision making.
Flow! All right. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, day, whenever it is.
Whenever it is.